Hello, YouTube, and welcome to this dialogue between myself, Michael Hartigan, aka Uma Stellar of oneskyastrology, and Rio Larmand. Rio, please
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rio. I'm an astrologer and an artist and the host of the Cosmic Wizard Show. And I'm so happy to be here today.
Nice. Today's dialogue is about Saturn and Neptune, and specifically because on the 20th of February, 2026, but also affecting things before that through 2025, the two planets come together in Pisces, in the early fish, the first fish of Pisces.
And I do think that July is really important to note too, because it technically does not perfect, but it's within like the tiniest hair.
Yeah, I forget. I think it was like 15 arc minutes or something that in
I think
2025. 12, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's very close. It's very, very close
So
to
close.
perfecting in summer 2025.
Mhm.
So we wanted to talk about Saturn and Neptune because not only, let's see, there's a couple reasons we want to talk about. One is because when the two of them get together, it's pretty powerful. It's been historically neat. A lot of interesting stuff has happened on the contacts of Saturn and Neptune, and this one involves Uranus and Pluto in the Earth signs, and for anyone who's not aware, we're both constellational astrologers, or like 13 sign astrologers. So we're talking about the actual like astronomical heavens. When I say that Uranus will be in Taurus and Pluto will be in early Capricorn. So early Taurus for Uranus and early Capricorn for Pluto. Early Pisces for a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And the two bodies, Pluto and Uranus, trine each other, right? They trine each other. That's it. That's it. We're doing this with our hands today. We're not sharing charts. We'll share charts later. We'll share charts later, and you'll see it all. But Uranus and Pluto trine each other, and Neptune and Saturn conjoin right on their midpoint, creating sextiles to both. And so all the outer planets are connected. What would you add to that, Rio?
Well, it depends in which direction we want to go first. I think with this formation that they're making, I just think that things are going to be happening very quickly.
Uranus does that.
Yeah, I don't know how far we're diving in right away, but this whole
let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the beginning. We can talk about Pluto and Uranus as we build them into the story. Let's start, since this is about a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Why don't we start with Saturn and Neptune?
Yeah, let's do it. So with Saturn, right, we are talking about the structures of our reality, and even if we just like dip into Pisces too, the stars that this is all taking place in, it's kind of the opposite. Neptune is kind of the opposite a little bit. You know, if like Saturn's kind of the structure of our reality, in like, you know, people ask like, are we in a simulation? Are we in a hologram? That sort of stuff. Like, I feel like Saturn
3D space. Saturn rules 3D space, the physical dimension, the real world, the quote unquote real world. Whatever it is to you, even if it's a dream, Saturn is that planet, that dream force
that like makes reality happen. And I feel like Neptune and Pisces both are like what's going on behind the curtain.
That's it. I think they both share a similarity, Saturn and Neptune, for all their wild differences, in that Saturn is the architecture of it's kind of ordinary 3D waking space, and Neptune is the architecture of the dream time and dream space, higher dimensional. And I say higher dimensional like very intentionally. I think I tend like I'm going to go on a little tangent here, very short. Like Indigenous and Aboriginal people all over the world, I personally believe that this waking life that we experience is like a shadow, a shadow of the real world, which is dream time.
Which can
And
be
that,
found in like many different, that idea can be found sort of cross-culturally in many different places.
yeah, I hear you. I've seen it in a lot of places, and I've seen
Even in
and
like magical systems and stuff like that, it's one that repeats for sure. And I find
cool.
things like that you can find like cross cultures since before the time of mass media. An interesting
By the time of language, right.
Yeah.
These are old ideas. I mean modern language, like the languages we use today,
Yeah.
not but yeah. Before the time maybe of writing, we could say easily before the time of modern writing. So yeah, I think one thing that's lining up that's interesting for all that Saturn represents, sort of more severity and difficulty and harshness, and Neptune represents this more like kind of party or like just a very tripped out attitude, I think. Neptune relative to Saturn is just more serious and focused,
for sure. Rather spiritual too, right? It's hard not to touch on that.
Yeah, the spiritual with Neptune, we'll have to, because this is all happening in Pisces, so that's so strong. Just to kind of paint a picture. Just to kind of paint a picture of
first, and then I'll say what I had to say.
That's it. Broad strokes first, and then we'll kind of work from there, I think. But to take Saturn and Neptune and kind of compare and contrast them, yeah, with Neptune, I was really blessed just a couple days ago to see someone else echo the thoughts that everybody gets Neptune wrong. It was Abby Quinn on Sumerian astrology, and I agree wholeheartedly that we may know a couple things about Neptune, and even she and I like disagree in our personal experience, what we've seen in charts, because she was saying some stuff. No, I have seen that. But Neptune rules the dream, and the really like at the level, this is atoms and molecules and like tangible, it's Saturn governs all that, the architecture of all that, the stability of all that. At the level that everything is consciousness, Neptune governs all that, the oneness, the sameness, the whole,
the hive mind.
Sure.
We're all one zone.
Everything, and that's where we get the spiritual.
So we're separate, really, right? Because Saturn's the little structures.
Right. In Saturn, we contract into discrete beings, and in Neptune, we get into agape, like all is love, everything is one. So they have this like very Neptune and Pisces have a sort of like a solvent effect where they dissolve borders, they dissolve boundaries, and this is what's going to be. We'll have to touch on this. We'll probably be back again to this idea very lovingly, that Saturn represents structures, as you mentioned, the structures of the world, and Neptune represents the dissolution of structures and boundaries, and like that solvent, kind of like it just, it's like the waves coming in on your sandcastle.
Yeah, and that's just like cookbook what it is. And with this particular conjunction, it's happening in Pisces, right? Which Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. So that means that basically, like, Neptune's stronger. Neptune wins in this situation. Yes. So, I feel like reality is going to feel a lot less real for a while.
That could easily be a side effect or a direct effect. Yeah, reality feeling strange, surreal. Yeah, less real.
And I think it's going to be really, really important for us all. Like, if we know that Saturn is really, really weak, I feel like it's going to be important for all of us to like kind of be our own Saturn a little bit.
That's it. That's it. We have to lean in, right? We have to lean in when anything's weakened in our transits or in the mundane transits. Yeah, there's a need to recognize counterbalance.
Like, you know, even just like routines, making sure you're taking care of yourself, I think is going to be really important. The basics, you know, have a good morning routine, make sure you're getting your sleep, like just like the really, really bare bone basics like that of like keeping yourself like your own structure.
And I would say for everyone, like, know where Capricorn is in your chart. Saturn and Capricorn are resonant, and you know, like in my, see, where is Cap in my chart? My moon's in Cap. It's the 12th house. So, you know, for me, this could just make fuzzy or hazy or weird 12th house issues, which are spiritual issues, or which are the 12th house is very strange, and we don't have to break it down here. But let's just say for me, this is going to represent that is going to trickle down to 12th house issues, and it might affect my Saturn. So knowing where my Saturn is, and we're not going to get into that, but these are the kind of things that it would be valuable for people who follow astrology and have a grasp of their own astrology to kind of like be aware of. Yeah.
And I mean, Pisces is resonant with the 12th house. And like Pisces and Neptune itself,
naturally,
the 12th house, right? So
depending on how you consider things, because now in the way that system develops, it was actually, if we go back to the ancient Alexandrian writings, Pisces would actually be correlate with the first house now because of this equinox sunrise in Pisces. So it's
oh really?
That's Kim Nosworthy Lovelace's true lifetime sky. She takes Pisces correlate to the first house. And then you have
I did know that she does that, but I didn't realize that was like the original intention.
It's OG. It's OG. Yeah, she didn't make that up. She's read her Claudius Ptolemy and Vettius Valens and so on. Yeah, she's done her deep homework. Yeah.
Oh,
so Pisces, I wouldn't try to correlate it to a house system. That may even be subject to like hemispheres on the Earth, northern, southern. It may I think that's a little too speculative to you. I don't want to get into that.
Right? Okay, fair. Let's not touch that.
But knowing where this will happen, like where Pisces is in your chart, right?
How to like personalize it for anyone who's watching.
Absolutely. It'll happen in Pisces. It'll affect Capricorn. I think we can leave it there. Like if you're past that in your own astrological studies, like you know what to do. And we'll put some charts up today. We'll get into like how this breaks down.
I do think this particular, because so many of the outer planets are involved, I feel like a lot of it is gonna be very impersonal. Like the thing I always say when we're dealing with lots of outer planets is like it can kind of feel like we're like tiny little bugs crushed between the forces of the old gods. You know, like so much of it is entirely out of our hands. It's like world happenings and things like that, you know?
Yeah. Especially with Pluto, because he's one of the actors involved, and he represents things that are ominous and big and out of your control. So this I think
in general, getting totally okay with the idea that for like the next little while we might not know what's going on, and a lot of it is gonna be outside of our control, and how can we find like peace within ourselves as we move through situations like that.
The question, right? How do we stabilize our groundedness and our sense of physicality in a world that's changing likely rapidly, likely under our feet, and in front of our eyes, and likely in ways that are, Uranus and Pluto. Neptune somewhat less, but Saturn to great extents. We have three of the actors involved: Uranus, Saturn, and Pluto. Famous for not caring about the personal feelings of anyone involved in any of their processes. This isn't about that's interplanet business. That's Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, to some extent Jupiter, and then not Saturn. Saturn's the part of us that's like, no.
Yeah. And Pluto, I think, anytime it's involved, it has to do with actual evolution. And so I think that in the grand scheme, like, it's, as much as we can like tie, these are planets, I don't want to like tie feelings to them so much, but like, I think in the grand scheme, Pluto wants what's best for us, but the like methods to get there can be like quite cold and extremely impersonal. And if things gotta crumble, then things will crumble.
I think, and this is an interesting aside, but I think we can. I think the ancients did it. They made mythology and gods out of the planets. They had planetary deities. They were like, planets are people too, Rio. So
planets are people too.
Yeah. So I think we can say maybe not that this planet is like like you or I or a person. Or even that like you and I would consider maybe like a deity to be, but I don't know. I don't know that planets don't incarnate in like anthropomorphic form. I don't know that. They might. But whether they do or not, I think we can say, looking at the body of astrology that we have, we can say that planets have intentions. When they come in, there's an intention, and Pluto's intention, like you mentioned, is to evolve situations, to move them forward. Pluto's never satisfied with how things are, and always is going to seek to, it's one of the reasons it gets called transcendental, is it's always in the next, sort of bringing things into the future. Pluto's not oriented to the past. Saturn is oriented to the past, and Uranus is oriented to the future. And actually at this point, since we're referencing like the event more and more now, I'm actually going to bring up a chart.
Yeah, let's do it.
I said I would. All right. And so this is the conjunction of 20 February 2026, and when we see Saturn and Neptune here in Pisces, we can also isolate Pluto and Uranus in Capricorn and Taurus. And I actually have another version of this chart which just skipping ahead, and then I actually have another version of this chart which is just these four.
Can I say one thing about this whole idea of timing?
Yeah.
Saturn does have to do with the past, but like very much how it is in its position of the sky as well. I think that Saturn is a bridge from the past into the future, right? I always think of like lineage, whether it's going backwards or forwards, is very much a Saturn.
Right. He gets called a lord of karma because he has to do with things that are established already. Like when you come into this lifetime, if you've set yourself up a situation, Saturn will like, have effect like that connected to the past and to prior causes. Yeah. Where Uranus is more of a catalyst and sets up sort of causes to future effects. And so you have,
which is, I'm sure that a lot of people watching things on your channel know this, but Saturn used to be the outer boundary.
That's right.
Right. And then Neptune came in and like blew that idea out of the water.
Uranus.
Uranus.
Yeah.
So, which is very resonant with what you just said.
Yeah. Interesting how they're all connected. Saturn was the outer boundary for a long time. And just one of the reasons he represents boundaries so deeply is because he kind of bounded the heavens. And then I want to say, I get this wrong all the time, but I think in the late 1700s, we discovered Uranus. And shortly after that, noticed the gravitational effects of something that they theorized had to be Neptune. They went and looked for it and they found Neptune. So, you know, and it was actually when they discovered Neptune, one of the correlates that was, you know, like Uranus discovery was right around the 7 Years' War, the French and English World War that the American Revolution was part of. And when Neptune was discovered, it was related to the invention of photography. It was, I think, right around the same time, and it was photography that was actually used to discover Pluto. So they all feed into each other really neatly. Except,
can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
You know, you said you were talking about how like people get Neptune wrong a lot of the time. Can you address that more specifically? Like what's sort of the story, and like what are you seeing to be the truth?
Well, I'll try to keep this short. Thanks for asking, because I have a tirade to go on. No, but I'll keep it short. When I talk about Neptune being misunderstood, I'm gonna take the charts down. I think when we look at the naming of planets, you know, the whole inner planet, Sun, Moon, out to Saturn, which is developed with, we watch their effects. We watch them move past the stars. We watch them interact with each other. We developed mythologies. And the Greco-Roman mythology reflects this deeply. The older Babylonian, Sumerian, the older, back to our archaic roots, astrologies or mythologies, excuse me, are reflective of the planets they represent. And when you get to Uranus, you have this sort of like situation where the discoverer of Uranus, I forget his name, but he wanted to name it George's star. Okay. And this is what my tirade is about, but it's indicative of just how stupid things get when you let politics into science, right? He wanted to name it George's star because he thought he discovered a new star. And then they were like, oh, it's moving. Well, it's a planet. Oh, well, and someone was like, no. This all goes out like Jupiter was the son of Kronos. Who is the father of Kronos? We'll just name it like that. So it was like it wasn't arbitrary, but it didn't, nobody had any insight into the nature of Uranus. They just named it because it was like, who's your daddy? You know, who's his daddy? And then when it comes to Neptune, it was almost like random. Like the character mythologically of Poseidon has next to nothing to do with the planetary Neptune. And this is where everyone who tries to apply the mythology, because like, let's say 80%, 90% of it works extraordinarily well. 100% of it works for the inner planets, what Vedic does. But when we get to the outer planets, you can't think, oh, Uranus, he was a god of the sky. And we know nothing about him in mythology. There's no real stories. He was the father of Cronus. He and Rhea, were they children of chaos or maybe, I don't think they were children of Nyx. That was like a darker line than Uranus represented. He was the lord of sky and space, and that has a little to do with it. But when we get out to Neptune, there's nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. Like, it's not so... Okay. So it can be watery. It can be watery. It can be emotional. It can be watery. But it's.
I do think it has the water, but you know, I never think of Poseidon when I'm going there, for sure.
No, and nobody does, because there's nothing there. There's nothing there that resonates. You know,
I feel like Poseidon in general doesn't super resonate with. You know, there's a lot of the mythologies that still, and who knows, this could just be like the people that I know. It could be a situation thing, but I feel like Poseidon in general doesn't isn't super like resonant as a deity anymore.
Not overly an inspirational figure anyway, right? Just pretty petty. And in those stories, like I don't know what mysteries are hidden in those stories, but it has very little relevance to the planetary Neptune that I can see. Now, I will want to come back to Neptune, because I'm not like one of those deranged postmodern thinkers that'll just tear something down and leave you with rubble. I do want to express some thoughts about Neptune, what it is, what it does, and how I've come to understand it. But I will say that Pluto has everything to do with Hades,
Everything.
Greek Hades, and was named by a child. They were going to name Pluto something else, and then the guy's daughter came through and was like, "Hey, that's Pluto," and he was like, "Oh, from the mouths of babes, how cute!" And they named it Pluto, and she was right. The duality of Pluto Charon, it's profound. But Neptune, not a chance. So people miss it. People who go by the cookbook, they miss it. And here's what I want to come back to, Rio. And here's the answer to your question. Well, the answer to your question I just gave in that tirade about, the naming of Neptune was folly, is ignorance, it sucks. I think that if you look at the solar system, and the way planets developed in it, congealed and developed through early, let's say early in the universe, I think it reflects a binary system, a binary star system, in that the planetary pairs seem to have developed you have the sun and the moon, which from Earth's apparent position are the same size, like the 108 109 to 1 ratio, the geometries between the sun to Earth and the Earth to moon. It's all very profound, indicating the sacred to the Vedics. But what I want to focus on is just that it's a pair. And likewise, Venus and Mars are a pair. Mercury was sort of like the weird androgen or hermaphrodite. He doesn't seem to be paired with anyone in this system. But you have Venus and Mars. You have Venus and Mars, and the way they're a pair is that they're totally similar and totally opposite at the same time. Likewise, Jupiter and Saturn, and their size, like you have Mars and Venus, you have Jupiter and Saturn, and you have Uranus and Neptune. And so what I see in that sort of binary logic is like a pair. You have an inner, faster moving benefic, Venus, Jupiter, and Uranus are the benefics, and you have an outer, slower moving malefic, something that's like, let's just say, I don't like to think within those categorical distinctions, but for the sake of differentiating them and seeing patterns, you can sort of see things like that. And I've come to see Neptune as increasingly malefic, which is in line with like the thinking of Bowser and other people who have done their own sidereal studies, as Neptune is an insidious malefic. And
I think that anyone who's had a bad Neptune transit can relate. But like the thing with Neptune is it's like such highs and lows, because have a good Neptune transit, and it is like wildly profound. Have a bad Neptune transit, and it's like I've been living in Delulu La La Land.
Lulu's, yeah, I know. And some Neptune people are so spiritually attuned, and so they know you better than you know yourself. It's scary. It's weird. They're like spiritualists and mediums, and some Neptune people are so far out to lunch, and it's weird. Neptune is very
really
weird.
Where the very classical, like, trines and sextiles good, like opposites and squares bad, are like very literal with Neptune. But one thing,
harsh Neptune.
One thing I heard Chris Brennan say about the whole like benefics malefics thing that really resonated with me, right? Because there's no denying that the malefics hold medicine too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love them. Mars and Saturn.
They do, and so I think because of that, we've gotten to a place where like it's almost kind of bad to say like things are benefic or malefic.
But no, I don't like it, but at the same time, it can be a little helpful. Yeah.
Lots of people don't, but also like on some level, it's also just true. But the sort of like the little spin that I heard from Chris Brennan that I really, really liked was that all it really means is that from a subjective point of view, the malefics are going to bring you situations that are like subjectively unpleasant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They are not necessarily like inherently evil, inherently bad,
No,
but like, which one would you rather go through? Like, benefics are a more fun time.
Right, right. I mean, we can look at Neptune if you look at the whole range of Neptune expression. Like we see Neptune opposition, bringing Neptune squares, bringing like let's just say harsh Neptune angles. They bring out the confused side, and then we see like supportive aspects to Neptune,
which really, I think, sorry, supportive aspects to Neptune. Go for it.
Oh, it's okay. It it depends on the body, but you see them like become very sensitized, very like incredibly sensitive and like refined in their like there's a quality that I'd say Neptune represents, like that higher dimensional reality. And I think there's a truth in the idea that we're all confused, like by reality. Like reality is itself a trickster. It is a shapeshifter. It causes people to believe all kind of things about it. It's a dream. It's a simulation. It's this. It's that. It's everything, but what it looks like. Once you start examining it deeply, it quickly it becomes apparent that the reality we live in is not even what it's pretending to be to us. It's just a weird fact of life. And that's Neptune's territory. The weird facts of life are and
I think even what we're speaking to about how, in its harsh aspects, it can be absolutely horrible. And I think what makes it worth noting, what makes it like almost the worst of the malefics when it's acting in its malefic quality is that it does not feel like it.
Oh yeah, you'll be convinced.
You'll be convinced. A bad thing is happening. It feels like the dream, the magic, the thing that we've always hoped for. But actually, like, it's just a fantasy, But I think speaking to how, the harsh aspects are bad and the good aspects are good, like even that in and of itself, because I think that's really, it's more pronounced than we find in other planets.
Yeah. The difference. I took Neptune to be 50-50 for the longest time, because good aspects to Neptune are like, wow, how enlightening, how inspirational, how vivid, how beautiful, how ideal. It's so ideal. But the bad aspects to Neptune, super rough.
Right? Like even that really speaks to Neptune itself, because Neptune deals with the all, the whole picture.
Yeah. Even more so, I think, than Uranus, I put these Uranus Neptune as a pair, and I started thinking about it, Rio, and I thought that I just made a little note about similarities and differences. And one of the similarities that I found is they both correlate with insight and higher dimensions. One way of looking at the differences is that Uranus is about waking insight, more so waking insight, just ideas and inventiveness and creative things in the waking world, especially resonant with Mercury and thinking. And Neptune is dreaming. Neptune's dreaming insight, subtle psychic insight, like medium type, like ancestors insight, the whole invisible world type insight. And another is they both correlate, in my experience as a professional, with altered states. I see Uranus correlate with exploration related, especially psychedelics, and I see Neptune correlate with escapist tendencies in altered states, especially alcohol and other downers like opioids have a Neptune connection. And this isn't a long list. This is a pretty short list, but then they both mature and they ripen and they complete processes. They both deal with mature stages in processes, like just very naturally. It's kind of where they are in the story of the zodiac. If Aries is like a natural new beginnings, and Pisces is a natural like dissolving of things into like a completion and endings. Then you have a sort of difference there In Uranus is like more social. You can kind of think of that in like the natural correlation with Aquarius in 11th house. I think Aquarius is very social. And Uranus is more spiritual. So you have like a social spiritual thing. And you have an intellectual emotional difference too with them. So where Uranus resonates more intellectually, Neptune more so in the feelings and the intuition and in the emotions, processing through that method. They're both confusing. That's a similarity. Uranus and Neptune are confusing. Uranus is confusing because it's disruptive, and Neptune's confusing because it's because reality is confusing, and Neptune represents all the weird gray area, all the. So I'm not going to say Neptune is inherently creating of delusion, but it does. The harsh aspects can correlate with delusion very easily. There's two more. They're both idealistic. They both have to do with ideals. Uranus deals with high truth, and Neptune deals with the fantastic. But they both deal with like, elevated, idealistic things. They both seek transcendental. They're both like being not visible. I don't know. I think it's just part of the weird, like kind of strange and seemingly sacred way that the world is arranged. They're both transcendental, and Uranus seeks the kind of next level. It wants to kind of like see, it's very future forward. Neptune seeks the source. So this is very interesting because when you get into evolution, Uranus is that urge that wants to seek the new. It wants new experience to evolve, right? And that new experience is like new experience through which we individuate and become more evolved as individuals. Neptune is like, no, I want the bliss of death. I want the oneness. I want the source. If I can have it without the pain of death, I want it, because Neptune's like that. But Neptune seeks the source. Where Uranus seeks like the next level. So these are like,
I feel like Uranus.
These are like simultaneously occurring urges, right? In life, we want more, but we're done, and that's, I see that in the Neptune Uranus split. What were you gonna say?
I feel like with Uranus too, for me, it's always kind of felt like the channel as well. Like if in Neptune we're sort of like seeking to get back to the all and seeking to get back to the source, you're right. There is like this underlying, like, just give me death. That's fine. If I don't actually have to die, even better,
Right.
I just, like, it's hard to explain in succinct ways, but I feel like when Uranus is kind of like when God is speaking to us and like handing us down ideas, it's the very like inspired ideas that almost come from somewhere else.
Oh, the noosphere, the world of information itself. Yeah, that's a Uranus thing.
Bringing it through as like sort of like a little agent.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. So at this point, I think we've looked a little at what's that?
And some tangents.
Oh, we've looked at some tangents, some good ones. We've looked a little at the charts. I wanna throw something else up on the screen to consider, Rio. I showed you this for a second, but it's like a little timeline that I made with my amazing graphic design skills. And so what we're looking at here is color coded. That's as amazing as it gets today. But we're looking at the period of time between 1900 and 2030. So we're looking at 130 years. And over these years, this chart plots the conjunctions and oppositions, or the sort of new phase expression. That's a conjunction, like a new moon, where if you take like Neptune as the slower moving, or the sun, and Saturn is the faster moving, and the moon, this would be like new. And the opposition will be a full phase expression. very
Mhm.
dynamic.
And so you're just showing the new one fulls on this, right?
Yeah.
For the conjunction oppositions.
Right. So the next one, the one in question, the one that spawned this conversation is here in 2025 and 2026, precisely 20th of February 2026. And yeah, it'll happen in Pisces. So we've already looked at that. So I didn't want to waste the space. What I want to do with this is kind of use this as a touching point for some of the interesting patterns that we see with Saturn and Neptune historically. And do you have information that you want to share, or should I jump in with?
I'd say just jump in. I'll riff off you.
Yeah.
I've got some. Yeah. Go for it.
So first of all, this only goes back to the conjunction in 1917, but we have data on this going back even another 100 years to the 1846 conjunction, and we have like a full breakdown of the development. In the 1846 conjunction, Marx and Engels published the Communist Manifesto. And here in 1917, we have the Russian Revolution, the creation of the world's first socialist state. And by like 1920, right about here, the Civil War is over and Stalin had come to power. And then the full phase expression of that was an opposition, a Leo Aquarius opposition. So with Neptune and Leo, that really favors, like, I would say it favors rulers, kings, and with Saturn and Aquarius. We just saw Saturn in Aquarius. It favors new systems, change, and new ways of doing things. But in 1936, USSR joined the League of Nations 3 years earlier, but Stalin's purges were at that time. So they were really seeing like communism on paper versus the reality of actual freaking communism. And there were show trials for like like the old generals and the people who resisted Stalin, and I think a lot of the Trotskyists were just executed. I'm not clear on that picture. But at the same time, in 36 in Germany, you have Hitler and the Nazi Revolution, and you have relative to Saturn and Neptune, this is neat. You have system of social security, right? Taking care of everybody, just the whole thing. For the United States, in that was developed in 35. So yeah, Trotsky himself was exiled. Trotsky's an interesting character. Never-ending revolution. I don't think anyone's ever been ready for that, much less Russians. But that was his thing. Stalin wanted a state for the people. He wanted communism for Russia. He wanted a state for the people. Trotsky wanted continual revolution. That literally, he wanted continual revolution. Very, very Aquarian. The world wasn't having it. So he was exiled at this time when Saturn was in Aquarius. Yeah. And then you have in 1953 a conjunction near Spica in Virgo, and then the Korean War ended with a truce between the United States and North Korea. Stalin died, and there were really significant Czechoslovakian and East German revolts at right around 53. And on a side note, like unrelated to the arc of communism, there were the discovery of DNA was correlated pretty closely to this conjunction here.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because DNA is functioning on like both those levels, the Saturn level of physical proteins and the construction of nucleotides, etc., And the Neptune level of like, this is a code that expresses the soul, the light body, the subtle reality, the intrinsic, the deeper code, the deeper code. It's Neptune simulating reality. That's
Yeah.
Neptune's the green man, or behind the green curtain. It's just Neptune.
And it brings in that point of lineage that I was
Yes.
saying I always associate with Saturn, right? It goes
Yes.
backwards and forwards.
Brilliant. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The construct, the architecture of lineage. Profound. And then just to jump to the opposition full phase expression around 1971, there is the nuclear arms agreement, the SALT agreements, and the Cold War ended. Detente ended the Cold War between. So there was like a threat, a sort of communist threat on the world. I mean, so that's an American perspective. There's a communist threat on the world. From a communist point of view, there was a capitalist or an American threat on their way of life. So I want to be like as objective as I can, but suffice to say, the Cold War ended with like the détente around 1971. And then in 1988, 89, there was a conjunction in, it was with Uranus in Sagittarius. So, that's going to be big, right? Sag, boom, makes things big.
And that's a pretty huge one.
Yeah, this one was a monster for communism and a monster for the world in general, but largely around communism. In China, there were the democracy protests in Tiananmen Square, and the tragedy there was the fall of the Berlin Wall. There is the end of communism in the following countries. I'll list them: Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Poland, Romania, Benin, Mozambique, Nicaragua, Yemen. 2 years later, in 91, Gorbachev resigns, the USSR is dissolved, and Boris Yeltsin bans communism.
And that's 89 is the beginning of the end of apartheid, too.
Good call. Yes. Brilliant. And then in 2006, we have a full phase conjunction. A full phase expression in the opposition, and Neptune in Capricorn, Saturn in early Leo, not Cancer, but just snuck into constellation Leo, the way the skies are. I hope we're not going to confuse anyone who's not familiar with this kind of astrology. But
we've got a whole video on the Cap Leo polarity too.
Hey, cool. That's true. We do. Yeah. Polarity videos. That's good.
Yeah.
We'll link that. So the Cap Leo is a naturally occurring polarity for a couple degrees, and that's where this 2006 conjunction opposition happened. And then so one thing that Saturn and Neptune seem to express in their cycles, their synodic period, and the phases of their expression is ideology, and they have this connection that we see in 2006. Like, keep in mind, like at the last new phase expression, the conjunction, communism was banned. So now we have this whole narrative, this whole arc, dating back to the production of the Communist Manifesto, back before this even begins, and the establishment of Russia, all timed to Saturn. There's more information about the timing of communism to Saturn Neptune cycles on cyclesofhistory.com, a non-astrology site. It talks about 36-year cycles of ideology and history. I'll throw that link up in the post-production. I'll get some editing done. But
and so what happened around 2006? I know that you were looking at
right.
More. Is that
thanks for keeping me on point. 2006. Well, Saddam Hussein was hanged, which is a little symbolic, death of the old order. But you have Twitter invented and YouTube absorbed into Google, which really were like ideologically charged platforms, especially if you think about Twitter falling into the hands of Elon Musk and becoming X, and is now like a very ideologically charged platform because he's like fully, fully politically active and invested now. So
And
you do have.
we're just talking, we're mostly talking new and full phases here, but in the square, 99 is one of the squares.
Okay.
For Saturn, Neptune, and around 99 is when like Google came to be as well.
Oh, okay. So Google's
And Y2K, of course.
Google's coming to be as an expression around the waxing square. The waxing square is when like the plant emerges and the first shoots show the leaves of like what it might be, you know. And then the full phase is really like, not to equate Google to YouTube or anything, but just to say that as a way of controlling media, right? A Saturn Neptune thing is like media and also propaganda and like shaping the world, Saturn, with
and Neptune rules television as well.
Oh yeah, and
right?
and theater and film. Yeah, absolutely. So in 2006, you see. Oh, go ahead. Say again, please.
Oh, I'll extrapolate on that further later, but as you were.
Thanks. Yeah. So in 2006, you see. Also, on a side note, you see the 2006 is when Pluto got demoted to dwarf planet, and then the whole solar system and the way they taught it in school, our perception of it was rearranged. Neptune becoming the gatekeeper of our modern world. We've expanded out of the 3D meat space into the world of Uranus, higher information and electricity technology, and beyond that into spiritual reality. We know this is energy. We know this is consciousness. We know we're dreaming. We just, most of us can't like leverage that intense belief and control, to, I mean, when we do, or to the degree that we're able to, we think of it as supernatural or magical, So that's just kind of where we are evolutionarily. But here's the thing. I digress. That was a total tangent. Thanks for bringing in the 99 info with the square. 2025. I mean, and then so when we look at 2025, 2026, I want to kind of bring in that whole chart. We have this like post-communist. You have this like post-communist scenario with like social media being.
I do have a little bit of information on the closing square too.
Oh, go for it, please.
The most recent closing square, because that was 2016, right?
Gotcha.
So Trump is elected.
Stop.
Standing Rock, Dakota Access is happening here in Canada. At the same time was the like issues with Wet'suwet'en, which I don't know if I'm actually pronouncing that properly, but
was that the schools, the natives, those issues?
Oh gosh, it's not, but yes, everything about residential schools was starting to come out, which is like a terrible rabbit hole to go down. No, Wet'suwet'en, it was another pipeline situation. Just extreme government overreach.
Right.
And like continued resistance. And
right around that time, 2016, 2017, Saturn was passing the galactic center.
Interesting. So maybe this is a new phase of things, speaking to maybe we're going into a phase more of well, I mean, it does feel like it's been building more sort of like indigenous perspectives coming
both
forward.
I think it's been a little polarized. I think people have really I mean, I've seen little firsthand of the indigenous world, but in 2017, interestingly, I was in Arizona on Oribe Reservation. And, I couldn't make any observations from my time there that could tell you anything about how the split was, but seeing like online indigenous attitudes, I think that the Standing Rock and that period of time, the election of Trump, it really solidified, like, we're not going to get our needs met through government. We have to we have to galvanize as communities and become strong in our strength. And the government isn't one of our strengths. The government is the thorn in our fucking side in almost every instance. So the indigenous world, I've seen it like really like keep the sort of like the strength and the inspiration of that alive, while, you know, the rest of the world is gone. It has really leaned corporate and illiberal and authoritarian. Like, I see that since Saturn's passage. Yeah,
that speaks something to, you know, which prong do I go for here? You know, I think that, like, we all want something to happen the environment, right? It's clear that, like, things have to happen, and it seems as if, like, the greater sentiment, you know, is again like looking towards government, looking towards corporatism, like, how can you fix this problem that, like, you know, if we go in that direction, they're just going to look for ways which they can profit off this problem. When reality is, like, if we want to fix the problem, maybe we need to go to the people who, like, actually know how to live with the earth and have been doing it forever, instead of like trying to reinvent the fucking wheel here. Pardon my language.
No, it's okay. It's not. It's appropriate. The thinking that got us here is not going to get us. Is not going to get us out of here. So you can't dig your way out of a hole with a shovel. It doesn't work that way. So we have to adapt and change our thinking. And that's one of the things that this 2025 event is going to push. So 2016, Saturn passed galactic center, started a new phase of Saturn. 1983, Neptune passed the galactic center, started a new phase of Neptune. Correlate with a lot, man. But mostly in Neptune language with the new age, the whole new age. Like, it didn't have roots prior to, like, in the 60s and 70s. It was just a bunch of weirdos. It wasn't like a mainstream thing. The new age was a way of talking about these things, ideas that had been fermenting or fomenting underground, that then now we're catching, like, you know, mainstream attention. And that's continued into the aughts and into the thousands with things like The Secret. Things are so, it's like very new age thinking, like manifestation. Like, it's not a secret, like, everyone knows that. And now they do again. So it really is definitely like hitting the big time, it feels like. Yeah, it's peaking. This spiritual movement. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there about Neptune at this time was sextile to Pluto, because for like 71 years Neptune and Pluto sextiled, or a very long time. 71 was Uranus Chiron. Pluto and Neptune were sextile for a long time, and they were sextile in 83, which is going to color this whole Neptune phase, you know, the next 165 years of Neptune expression, with the effect of Pluto sextile. And one of the effects of Pluto sextile was so long, we really had a chance to study this one, is like finding your own spiritual path, pulling it together out of like bricolage or piecemeal, or just choose your own adventure kind of approach to spirituality. And what that all portends, right, for 2025 and 2026 is pretty wild. So I want to turn to the chart. There aren't a lot of chart features here that I want to look at, but I do want to note that Uranus is right on Algol, which is a ferocious star, and that Saturn and Neptune meet on Shiat. Now, Shiat is not a ferocious star, but Shiat is a difficult star. It's a saddening star, and it's an illuminating star. But the ideas that she are resonant with are so next level that they can cause heartbreak. For people with Shiat born in their charts, they have access to next level thinking, crazy levels of ideas and everything like that. And it can be alienating. Their ideas, I've seen this, like, where people are so genius that no one can understand them. It's like heartbreaking. They wish they
outsider energy.
sort of, yeah, very much so. They wish they could be like yeah, they wish they could be an insider, but Shiat keeps them like just crazy on the edge. So very, very weird stuff. Rio, what do you see in this?
Well, I've got a quote. I've got a Tarnas quote that feels appropriate at this time, which is that, like, Neptune and Saturn coming together can cause a subtle but pervasive, like, darkening of the collective consciousness, which can come about in, like, social malaise in general, or as a direct response to, like, some sort of tragic events. So there is, I think, like, we can't built in. It can be, I think, very easy to, like, lose heart a little bit. And and Neptune itself, we've talked about the illusions of Neptune a little bit. We've talked about how it is really, like, idealistic. It wants, and part of that is because it's, like, tapped into the truth to, like, the bigger truth that, like, we are all one. We could choose peace, like, all of this. And in general, something that can happen with Neptune is that, like, with the illusions, when you put something up really, really high on a pedestal, eventually the wheel turns and it has to fall, right? So the process of disillusionment is very alive within the Neptune process. And with Saturn, right, I think that it's naturally going to happen. It can, like, it wouldn't be, forewarned is forearmed in some ways, and, like, disillusionments, I think, are likely at this time.
Absolutely. I love that you bring that in. Jeffrey Wolf Green would be grinning from ear to ear wherever he's at. He was always saying that Pisces rules illusion. Yeah. And as such, it also wants disillusionment. It seeks deep truth, but through this hazy maze of what's real anyway, kind of territory.
To speak to, the timeline that we were just looking at, the whole sort of process, these key points of communism, and something that I feel like should be, like, something we really, really got to watch for in cycles like this is sort of something that we already spoke to. We were talking about Neptune and how, like, it wants the joy of, like, we were talking about, like, the joy of death in the way of, like, being brought back to
rejoining the source. That's it. Yeah,
because that's what it actually wants, right? But also, like, if it doesn't have to, then cool, right? And
through meditation or spiritual experience, yoga, drugs, transcendental, all of it. Yeah, Neptune.
And so this sort of attitude, I feel like, is really inherent in Pisces, because it is a little bit, like, lackadaisical too, when we put it with Saturn and with this timeline, and it is applied more to, like, our everyday reality. We as a people, we want the ideal. We want everything to be taken care of for us. We want everyone to, like, have their basic needs met. We want, we want the absolute ideal of, like, everyone being taken care of and it's all good and we're working together.
That's communism. You just described communism on paper.
Exactly.
Right.
But if we don't really have to work for it, and someone else, aka government, can just handle it for us, well then. And so there is this process of, like, very, very much being willing to, like, hand our responsibility and power away for some sort of ideal story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that is, in my personal opinion, an absolute trap.
It
that we
is.
gotta
It
watch
is.
out
It's one of those traps. It's one of those
Mhm.
traps. And I think historically, just to think in political frameworks, the
Mhm.
anarchists would have agreed with you. The anarchists would have agreed with you that we all need to keep a certain amount of collective and individual power, and that
Mhm.
comes with a certain amount of individual responsibility. And the more you
100%.
outsource that, the more precarious a position you're in, the more you have
Mhm.
to.
But we see it time and time
Yeah,
and time again.
time again,
It's
time again, time again. I
a
know
really great idea.
it's a trope. It's a trope of this age.
Wonderful. It's wonderful on paper, and then we like hand our power over to like,
Mhm, mhm,
some sort of Saturn daddy
mhm.
handle it for us, and
Yeah,
it's never the good idea.
right, right, right.
That's never how it works.
Yeah.
And one thing that's been really alive in my thinking lately is
Mhm.
that this very much just that idea of like, we all want the village.
Right.
But the village actually comes from like all of us being our own sovereign people and showing up
Yeah.
and like being our whole selves and pitching in and helping,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that in its idea form is like very, very great. But in its like actuality form,
Right.
it's a lot
Right.
harder, especially just like in this life of like filled with absolute distractions.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
It's so easy to like sit down and like there's your day gone. It can be difficult to form actual community.
Right. That's it. We have systems that perpetuate a sort of like well, not that personal responsibility approach, but we have systems that probably are just built primarily around finding reasonable ways to outsource kind of as
Mhm.
many of your responsibilities as you can. I
Mhm.
mean, it depends on the system,
Well,
depends
and
on the
to be
culture.
a little good worker bee,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, especially I'm just speculating here. I'm Canadian, right? But
Hmm.
especially in like places like the USA where you need health insurance,
Hmm.
right? Like in order to be a quote productive member of society, like there just isn't time to do all the things yourself.
I agree. I think that a lot of people in the modern world uh, are under that burden, and with the wealth distribution at this time in history. Um, I think honestly that if anything, I I'm not an optimist around all that. I'm not a doomsdayer either, but I think we can
I'm
expect to
always an
see.
optimist.
Yeah, I think
I'm
we
always
can.
a little bit of both built into one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Doomsday optimist. That's why. But
A
it's like a very Plutonian concept. But I think,
little bit,
I
yeah.
think, I think that just looking at the whole alignment, I think we can expect things to change. And so I
Mhm.
think that one of the things about Pluto and Uranus that's hard to wrangle with, especially when they get together and they're part of any formation, is like it portends change, and change
Mhm.
is never happening in a comfortable way. Change always represents the patterns and familiarities and habits and conditioning that you're
Mhm.
used to um, becoming somewhat upturned. Like it's Uranus is famous for being unexpected, disruptive, and
Mhm.
like just a difficult influence.
I feel
And
like Uranus is going to bring some more speed to the process too, right? Because Pluto can be like quite slow moving.
the
Uranus,
whole yeah
like,
the whole thing, if you look at all the transits involved, it's going to happen in 2025 and 2026.
mhm,
So you're looking at a 2-year process where these things are like some focus is more here, some focus is more there, and then in
mhm,
early 2026, February 20th, Saturn and Neptune come together, and that's kind of like the
mhm,
apex. And through the rest of that year, it all I believe it all winds down and moves out of order.
mhm. I mean, I do think like it gets so close. It gets so close in July that
It
it's
does. It does.
like
Monster.
it's so close. It's basically a first contact, in my opinion, right? Like, because I feel like the lead up to can often be more intense. Like, it's almost as if like the pressure valve is released when it actually perfects and the crossing happens, you know.
And when you say pressure valve, that's what I think of when I see Saturn stationed in the sky. Like if here's exact contact and Saturn's like, ooh,
yeah, like we're gonna get like
you're gonna feel that.
You're gonna feel, you know, for sure. I think it's gonna be like, if anything, more intense. You mentioned when we were talking before we hopped on here that it's really just one pass, right? But we get so close. It's giving like dress rehearsal vibes.
Dress rehearsal,
so, like
preamble. There may be a preamble. We can look at 2025, as jarring as it may be relative to the structures of power. I mean, your prime minister just quit because my president is an uncontrolled behemoth.
My prime minister just quit because like hundreds of thousands of people have been calling for his resignation for years too.
Then I'm not hip to Canadian politics. I didn't know he was so hated.
I live in Alberta too, which is like the conservative holdout of all of Canada. So I definitely maybe seeing a lot more of that than in other areas. But like, people have been enough with everything that's happened. Like, I think the Liberals just want to try and get someone more likable in before election time, because it's coming up, honestly.
Hey, cool. I mean, there's so little about that. Obviously, so little about that I have a good grasp of. I'm just not going to speak above my knowledge level. It seemed to me like a couple weeks ago he like flew down to Mar-a-Lago to like talk to Trump, and then like the next thing I see of him in the news is like, I'm out of here. So I'm sure it gets painted a certain way, and I'm sure he has his own private truth, and I'll just leave it there. I shouldn't have made statements like that.
I think he's got a lot going on personally too. So
one could assume, sure, as prime minister.
Like that, but
okay. Yeah, there's so much I don't know. I should just. Yeah, I'm not going to edit that out, but let's move on. Let's move on. What are your closing thoughts on this thing? We're going to be dealing with change. We're going to be dealing with social transformation. This has the power to change the real world, the structure, the architecture of the real world, from the level of the deepest, most like spiritual intentions and urges within reality, itself. This is going to be turbulent. How can we orient ourselves to this? You had mentioned something good in the sort of green rooming. We did the chat we had before we recorded, which is leaning in to Saturn, because Saturn will be weakened. And I think we made a little bit of note of that early, but let's now with this whole context.
Well, here's my thing. I think that the urge is going to be like, one thing that you said in the sort of green room process is that like all of this is going to be operating outside of the comfort zone, right? And the urge may very well to be to like, you know, a little bit of malaise, desire of like, okay, we want something idealistic. We really want it to, you know, it could be so much better. And that's not like, it's true. It could be so much better. And the urge may be to like hope that someone else will fix it and to give away responsibility, especially with Saturn so weakened. And I think that the prescription is actually the absolute opposite.
I think we can expect to see people en masse giving away their personal power to new systems and getting really on board, for better or worse, with new systems. I'm going to go with worse on that one. I'm going to resist that urge and lean into my, personal, that I am the central pillar in my own life, and I'm sort of the authority I'm the boss of me, the expert on myself. Not the very highest authority in the universe, but when it comes to me, I am not intending to outsource my power. So I want to be
Mhm.
careful during this time of ways that are subtle and insidious, like Neptune. They
Mhm.
kind of start to seep in and like, start make people think ideas like, oh, maybe, I don't know, maybe all that deranged stuff makes sense after all. Who knows?
Yeah, I think if you find yourself in any sort of a position where you're feeling like very, very sure of yourself, like sides, if you find yourself in a position where you're very, very sure that you have an enemy, step back.
Yeah.
I think that we need to keep in mind that peace is an active process. It's not just something that we do, like we put our hands up. It's actually something that can be very challenging and difficult at times. And I think it's important that we choose that.
Right.
And I think it's important that even on a very, very micro level, we take radical responsibility for our own thoughts, because since the beginning of looking at this transit, the thing that is like glaring to my intuition anyways is that I feel like our thoughts are going to become reality very, very, very quickly.
You've said that. That's an intuitive hit for you, and that's powerful. I trust your intuitive hits. That are thoughts. No, that doesn't mean to say that you're going to, go out and apply the secret and manifest that Gucci bag in 1 second. But it does mean that we focus on, what we focus on a deep way with our feelings, Neptune, with our psychic energy, Neptune, is
And
going
we're
to
going to
be
be doing it collectively, everyone.
collectively, right? And that's going to be linked to reality. So individually and collectively, I think we can expect to see a lot of people kind of manifesting for themselves out of a sort of lower level, or out of being like manipulated by the kind of powers that be.
Like, this process is going to work whether we are actually conscious of it or not, right? So are we going to be manifesting the world that we want to see based on some sort of proactive level of like taking responsibility for our own thoughts and our own dreams and our own desires? Or are we going to be manifesting from a place of like fear and panic and ruminating on negative thoughts? Because it'll work whether we like realize it's happening or not. So I think the more people that can get on board and realize like no, it is actually really important during this time that I dream of a better world.
Yeah.
The more the better.
Yeah. That's it. There's both going on with this, right? There's both. And Pluto splits it, as much as the nature of Pisces is somewhat split. Although we can say this happens in the first fish, and there's a little more to do with like the religio spiritual stuff, and the less with the dissolution and the endings and the approach to Aries, more with the actual like, oh, where's this sort of deep truth of the deep spiritual truth of things. I see that in Pisces. I've seen that consistently.
Yeah, I've got two other sort of intuitive hits on this one. And,
please.
One of them, which like ties into the first, is turn off the television. Turn off the news. Don't listen. Whatever.
So let's unpack this for the younger generations, because no one watches television anymore. You're talking about institutional messages, mainstream media, propaganda. You're talking about be selective where you're getting your information, what you're putting in, garbage in, garbage out.
100%. Things are going to be shifting on like possibly massive scale, and if something is on its way out, they're going to use everything that they can to try and survive, and they will, mass media, television, or like Neptune rules television, and like mass media in general. Like, if just don't believe the hype. Do not believe the hype. I think is going to be so important. Just A, because it's probably not true. B, because like I said, it's going to be really, really important to like protect our own peace. I'm not like telling people to bury their head in the sand here. Okay. I'm telling people that like,
No, you have to prioritize. You have
exactly.
to.
It's a good time for the
Yeah.
serenity prayer. What can
That's it.
you actually affect, and like don't get lost in the sauce?
Right. Keeping your attention focused on the control or the variables in your life that you have agency over.
Yeah. Do what you can where you actually can.
Right.
And if you can't, turn it off.
Yeah. It's all the outsourcing and the messages and the people who want to co-opt your, peace of mind, your garden, everything. They'll take it all. They'll take it all. They really will. And if you let them in to your house, your proverbial house, that's the house of your body, your temple, you have yourself to thank for that. That's I'll second that. I'll co-sign that message, Rio. Turn it off and be careful. Yeah, be careful about the information you're taking in.
And like understand the power of your words, right? Like, in what way are you going to be a destroyer, or are you going to be a builder with your words? Sometimes staying silent is like the better option, right?
Yeah. No, again, I can't argue with that.
Again, not in a like burying our heads way, but of like, I think that like what will be going on under the surface of this is that like things may, like I said, reality might feel a lot less real. I think there's going to be like one story that we're going to be served and an absolutely different reality of what's happening. And in the garden of this reality, we can actually like plant seeds of like amazing, beautiful things happening.
Yeah.
But don't get trapped. Be a builder.
Yeah. That's I think that's exactly right. I think if you need an astrologer to tell you that that's on brand for the information delivery system that we generally experience, like on the internet and in media, wherever you are in the world, there's bigger problems there if you need astrology to tell you that. But I do want to co-sign that too, Rio. I think that's important, and I think that the need to channel our own feelings, our own emotions, our Pisces world constructively and in a building way, we're going to have very likely the anxiety of change and being pushed out of the comfort zone. We're going to have the anxiety of new systems of organization in the world. And if we can't channel that anxiety into building something, doing something constructive or healing or growing something, it's just very likely that the anxieties and the fears and the doubts that people will feel will be channeled naturally in a bit destructive way. So to lean in,
we got
whatever that looks like. Yeah. We lean in mindfully and skillfully that's the main message. I think that's like Occam's razor, the simplest. Well, that's an explanation, but not that an explanation is necessary here, but just that understanding of how to incorporate this information. I think keeping it simple is always best. Having a simple guideline to go back to. It's like, oh, yeah, this is hard. It's uncomfortable. It's challenging. Am I weeding my garden? And what am I planting there? Am I building in my communities?
As within, so without. We can't, it may seem like there's all these like huge big issues that we all need to solve, like weed your own garden. Very much.
I love
like, do what you can where you're at, and that will actually have ripples outward. And my last sort of thing, which I think is, it's a way to really constructively use the fact that that like Neptune is winning right now, right? Or it will be
in Pisces. In Pisces, Neptune's stronger. Yeah.
Right. And that is, and using whatever language resonates with you is just like forming your own connection to source, to God, opening those, you know, and not going through someone else or like something else, like open that dialogue.
That's it. Yeah. This is
You know?
between everyone in the universe, like personally.
Yeah.
Whatever God
This is
is to you is the intelligence
exactly
of what it's not, you know, we're not,
the
I
source
don't think either of
code.
us is religious, but yeah, I think um that this is there's an incredible individual journey to
Mhm.
there's always an incredible individual journey to be made. But even though this is about outer planets and a very collective, very deep collective, chthonic, unconscious process, the individual journey is going to be to clarify the architecture of the connection between the individual and life, the
Mhm.
universe, reality, this construct, whatever it is, this ocean.
Like it may feel like there's nothing that we can do, but I feel that the reality is that like every one of us can actually have a really incredible impact if
Oh,
we're
yeah,
like really willing to like, just tend our own garden, you know?
that's
And
it. That's it.
you know, it's been my experience that like if you need strength, you can always ask for it and it will be delivered. I think it's just written into the source code. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
I
having
get that.
trouble,
I
just
get
ask.
that. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, not for
There
things
is
to change, not for like the whole world to change so things will be easier for you, but like to have the strength or the, you know, inspiration to get whatever it is you need to like face this sacred challenge, whatever that may be.
That's it. There's an inner wellspring and we have access. It's inner to us, it's interior. So we can adjust the flow or open the tap or lean in. There's a
Mhm.
source of goodness and energy that moves in the universe and it goes by all kind of names. But yeah, don't feel alone. That
Mhm.
might be one of the that might be
Yeah.
one of the things Saturn can do. But you know, rather than try and strategize for all these events, I think the best is to leave it really broad. Keep it positive, keep it constructive, leaning in to your boundaries, to your connection, to developing your own, and I mean the royal you, just broadly all of us, but
Mhm.
developing your own uh, conduit. Let's call it a conduit. That's a
Yeah.
Neptune word. I think that's the goodness. I think that's the
Mhm.
goodness in all this, Rio. And I'd like to kind of put this down in the interest of time, keep this timely for the people.
Cool.
And I kind of want to just shift. So thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for
Thanks
hashing.
for having me. This is
Oh
great.
my gosh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always a pleasure. Do you have projects that you're involved in? Yeah, I know you just like sold out of
I've got
calendars. There's still more.
I've got a
Okay.
couple. I've got 8 more as of this moment.
Oh wow.
Still, I made a planner, and it is sort of to prepare people in a really productive way for this upcoming year. It's like functional planner, and it also has like the moon signs every day by the actual constellation, new quarter full moons. It's a lunar cycle journal, and the theme is a self-love spell.
Yeah.
So really just like taking it easy on yourself, you know, and like tending that inner garden in that way. And it's filled with little blurbs throughout of like important events of like what's going on, what might you expect, you know, and my
Cool.
sort of
Cool.
take on various things.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I've got a website.
And you mean astro events, like
Yeah, astro event.
celestial events, right? Right.
Yeah, and it'll have like the equinoxes and solstices and stuff in there too.
Yeah, yeah. Super.
And if you want one, you can go to
Yeah.
www.priestess-press.art.
All right. We'll put that up.
And
We'll put that up.
yeah, and I also have a YouTube channel that I haven't really touched for a while, but I've got a new project that is going to be coming out that is also like very, very much focused on like spreading seeds of goodness for this Neptune Saturn conjunction that we have coming up. So I think it's just a Cosmic Wizard. I should know my own YouTube channel, but
Doing the Cosmic Wizard. Yeah, what is it?
Cosmic
Wizard
Wizard
something.
show.
We'll put links. We'll get them on screen. Get
Yeah,
links in the
we'll get
description.
links.
You do the
At
Cosmic Wizard show.
Wizard Show is what it is. Cosmic Wizard Show on YouTube.
Cosmic Wizard Show.
And we've got a really great series on the like strange oppositions that can happen when using constellational astrology too.
That's right. That's right. We did a series on polarities, the natural polarities in the sky, and how weird they get at their weirdest. And we mentioned the Leo Capricorn opposition, in the natural opposition between those couple early degrees of Leo and late Capricorn. And so these things can happen. Yeah, we'll have links. We'll have all kinds of links. I think that's a great place to wind it down. So I want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
Yeah, and bless you all as we all move into this 2025 toward 2026 collectively. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Yeah, thanks for sticking it out with us. I hope you have a fabulous everything.
Yes, fabulous everything.
Fabulous everything.
You all.